Welcome to another edition of the Business of Sports, Playmakers Beyond the Competition. I'm Ken Dubinsky, joined by every week Chris Roseman. Chris, how you doing?
Ken, I'm doing great. It's a good time to be in St. Louis, the weather is awesome. Soccer season, the youth soccer season is going crazy, and the Cardinals are winding down. St. Louis City's winding down. Blues are getting ready. That Missouri Tiger environment last Saturday at Faurot Field and all around in Columbia was just electric. Not just for Saturday, but in the week leading up to it. And the SEC programming with Paul Feinbaum on Friday. And I understand that was the best attended show they've ever had. I think Marty McGee was talking on his show last week and was talking about just how overwhelmed they were, or super impressed they were with the audience that was there for Friday. And Saturday morning, they started lining up at 6 a.m. to be ready for the show that went on at 8. So kudos to those fans and to the passion of college sports, and it's just really a great time.
It is, and we're obviously talking about the Mizzou KU game, which was last week, and the atmosphere, everything leading up to it. ESPN, it was the highest rated game on ESPN2 since 2022. It was neat seeing the national media catching on to what that border war really means, and the atmosphere was unbelievable at Faurot.
Yeah, we leave it every day. We've waited for that rivalry to come back. We got a taste of it, a good taste of it, earlier this year on the basketball court. But we haven't seen football since 2011, and then KU hasn't been to Faurot Field since 2006. So it was a long time in coming. Yeah, the story. It's not just a rivalry. This goes back to the 1800s. I mean, you've heard it a million times by now, but this is deep. And to feel that passion, and I've got the 20-year-old that's up at Mizzou, and for her to kind of just kind of latch onto that and feel that excitement and feel that connection to the state university, and it's hatred for KU. I did talk to a KU administrator, and it's all in. We try to tamp it down a little bit, but it was a great day. It was a really fun day.
And it was neat that some of the key players were St. Louisans, Kevin Coleman, Jamal Roberts, and what it meant to them, especially those two being St. Mary's teammates in high school, and Kevin, of course, from a purely biased standpoint, it was exciting for me because we just released the Kevin Coleman chips, shameless plug here, available at Schnucks and Old Vienna racks at convenience stores, and also for the first time this year at Faurot Field. And I know you said you saw a lot of them, and it was exciting for Kevin. I'll tell you what, Kevin Coleman is an outstanding young man. He is who every Mizzou fan should want to be a Mizzou athlete. Just a great kid.
Ken, you brought him to this. We were at Bragging Rights last year, and you say, "Hey, you want to meet Kevin Coleman?" I was like, "Oh, sure." So Kevin Coleman walks in. Kevin Coleman is mature beyond his years. I mean, he can just command. He's got a commanding presence. He's sure about himself. He's such a great kid, and I was just blown away by him. And just his 10 catches, 120 yards. His chips come out that day. They're all over the stadium. I mean, what a great coming out party for Kevin Coleman. I know he had a great first game too, but on the field, awesome, and off the field, even better. And just his message about coming back to Missouri and encouraging those kids to stay in the state, and the best of the best to play for Mizzou in all sports. Whether it's football or soccer or basketball, whatever it's going to be. Basketball is following the same trend, so it's really cool to see.
Absolutely. A lot of fun. And we're going to have a lot of fun right now. We're going to bring on Dave Greene, the president of Big Toe Media, STL Sports Central, and Podcast Heat. I know our listeners are going to enjoy this conversation. We are excited to have on today the man who started it all, and I'll go through what that is. The president and vice president and director of sales for Big Toe Media, obviously the parent of KLIS, the Lou Information Station, where we are right now. Also, STL Sports Central, which we'll get into, very exciting developments there. And also Podcast Heat, which I'll let him tell you more about with a lot of podcasts. And we want to have Dave Greene, of course, is who I'm talking about. We want to have Dave on to talk about really the changing landscape of sports media and how he's seen it and been at the forefront of it. Dave, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm great. I cannot imagine how many guests you went through before you got to me on your list, but I am excited to be here with both of you. As you know, I'm a big fan of the show.
Final count was 47, I believe, right, Chris?
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah, if we just multiply by 8.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
So Dave, just kind of start from the beginning. I know Parkway Central grad, local here in St. Louis. Talk about your road kind of to where you are now. I know it's been a long run, a lot of different experiences.
Yeah, and it's, kind of interesting that I'm doing this from my office at 590, which is now KLIS, which is, where it all started, not in this particular office, but it was in Clayton. And I went to Mizzou, and I actually had a very different experience than a lot of people who go to Mizzou Journalism School, because when I got there, it wasn't necessarily for me. And what I mean by that is I wanted to get going. I wanted to start doing things, right? And we didn't have podcasting and things like this where we could just do it on our own. And the opportunities at Mizzou were mostly for upperclassmen. And so I had gone and gotten an internship at one of the radio stations in Columbia, and then was told I couldn't have the internship because I wasn't an upperclassman. And it's so funny how that actual that incident changed the course of my whole life.
Wow,
and the person that gave me the internship was Steve Moore, who is now the program director at KMOX and has been for many years. And we work together in sports radio. So, my story basically started as an intern at KFNS in 1994. And I did anything and everything I could possibly do there to, make myself be known and get to know everyone and do every job possible, and just kind of became the guy that would never leave.
Was that about the time KFNS started in 94?
So it had started in 93. And it wasn't very old. It was still it was owned by CBS Radio at the time, or I think it was actually American Radio Systems and then sold to CBS. But it was in a cluster with a bunch of other stations, right? So Y98 and some other stations in the market. And to say we were the runt of the litter was putting it mildly. And so it ended up getting sold to Greg Marisek and the local group here. And I had been interning for a while and doing some part-time stuff at the station, and Jay Randolph Jr. and I had become really good friends. It's actually kind of disgusting, but we became friends through smoking because Jay would smoke during the breaks, of course, in the stairwell at the building on Clayton.
Of course.
And at the time I smoked. And so we hung out, got to know each other, and fast forward almost a year and a half later, a person had quit, and Greg was buying the station. They knew it was happening, but it takes a while to officially change hands. And there was going to be about a 6-week interim period. And so they gave me the opportunity to go on the air with Jay and do the morning show, but kept telling me, when the new group comes in, they're going to make their own move. And those 6 weeks turned into almost 6 years. So had a lot of fun doing that with Jay, but I knew it wasn't my future. So I ended up leaving, got into management, and sort of the rest is history, because that's pretty much where I stayed for, the rest of my time in radio and now in podcasting and sort of the other side of it.
Yeah, that seems to be a very common way, or a way to get in to your industry or to your sport, whatever it might be, is just like right place, right time. I don't know if it was Yogi Berra said, half the battle is just showing up. yeah, in a small outfit like that back in 1993, 94, you wear a lot of hats, and sometimes, there's an opportunity that arises, and you obviously took advantage of that. And look where you are today. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I always look back on it, and I love speaking to schools and students and young people that want to get in the business. And first of all, anyone who ever reaches out to me and wants to shadow or talk to me or even do an internship, my response is always yes, and mostly because you took the first step and you reached out, because so many people won't do it. I can't tell you how many interns I saw over the years, just like me, come through KFNS, but never tell people what they wanted to do, who they were, write anything about them. My first play-by-play gig, which was really what I wanted to do at first, Frank Cusimano comes walking into the station one day. He walks by the producer's office. He looks in, says hello, sees me and another guy, walks by, does his show. At a break, he comes out and he looks in and he goes, "Dave, didn't you tell me you wanted to do play-by-play?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "There's an opening at UMSL. Would you be interested?"
There it
And
is.
that's how I ended up getting my first play-by-play job. But that never happens if I don't introduce myself to, endear myself to Frank and let him know what it was that I wanted to do. And I go back to this day and try and tell everyone that story, that he fortunately remembered it. Normally you got to be a little squeakier than I was, but he's such an incredible guy, and he and Bernie Miklas were there for me from the beginning, and two people I'm still friends with today.
And Dave, it's great what you do in terms of helping kids out that are trying to get into the business, and as you're telling the story, that a big part of that is because you had people that did that for you, and I'm kind of the same way. A mutual friend, Jay Randolph Sr., when I was back in a much younger man, gave me an opportunity as an intern at KSDK back in the day in the sports department, and I've always tried to do the same and helping people out any way I can, and you've probably seen some of those people go on to some really good things.
Yeah, I will tell you, it was kind of cool. One time when I was running, I first left St. Louis to manage some station in Memphis, and there was a time that I could drive from Memphis to St. Louis and hear one of my former interns on the air the entire way,
Oh,
That's
because
awesome.
there was an intern of mine who was on the air in Memphis. There was an intern of mine who was on the air in St. Louis, and there were interns of mine who were in a few cities
there it is.
along the way. So it was
That's
really
awesome.
cool, in touch with a lot of people that, were part of KFNS in those days, and people that I've had a chance to work with. And I love the business. It's changing. You, like everything else, you have to grow with it and adapt with it, but it's still a great business to be in.
Absolutely.
When you went to Mizzou and the journalism school, I mean, were you more interested in the radio piece or the broadcasting piece as opposed to the writing piece?
Yeah, that, and that was, so my first big J200, I think it was, that first class, or 300 people or whatever, and I think it was Don Randall was his name, who got up there
Yeah.
and started talking, and he asked for, people to raise their hands, who's here for magazine, who's here for this, who's here for that, and he actually said, "Who's here for sports?" And me and a few other people, and he said, "Just to be clear, we teach journalism here, not sports."
Oh,
And I was like, "Okay,
I
I'm definitely," because this was a week after I had gotten the internship and then was told that I couldn't have it. So those are my first two experiences with Mizzou Journalism School. And I will tell you my third. This is actually kind of interesting. And Mizzou is a great school. I have two kids who go there now. I love it dearly. So I'm just telling you my experience as an individual. We had a lab, I think, for that J200 class. And I was in the class, and there was some discussion going on about how you knew this was going to be the right business for you, or something along those lines. And there was a guy behind me who looked the part, right? He had the full package, but his answer was, "Yeah, I'm a 4.0 student." And I was like, "What does that have to do with this particular business? Like, where do you think?" He's not in this business, by the way, to this day.
Yeah.
I have followed him, and it's actually funny. You both probably know him, and I'll tell you sometime when we're off the air.
All right. All right.
That's great. It's funny. I'll tell you, Dave, Don Ranley, I had his class probably 8 or 9 years before you did. And I
Okay.
remember the same line.
Yeah.
So it was consistent.
So my experience was very, very different in college, because in between freshman and sophomore year is when I started at KFNS. So all I knew to do was to work hard. That's all I know. And so in my head, if I could get in the field and work, then I'll outwork everyone. That's just, typically what I would do. So I didn't. Eventually, after my sophomore year, they had offered me a position to stay in that summer, and I wanted the job. So I finished up at UMSL here and worked at the station and played against sports and made it all work.
That's great. And when did you transition? I mean, I went through J school. I was in broadcasting for a while, and then actually wanted to be on air, as I'm sure you did, and then transitioned into producing and behind the scenes, and enjoyed that a lot. When did you know that you wanted to make that transition from maybe on air to sales?
Yeah, so I had been on the air for like 6 years, and I didn't love play-by-play like I thought I was going to. It was very interesting. I was fortunate enough to get the job to do the St. Louis Swarm, a basketball team out in St. Charles.
Yeah.
Had a lot of cool players. We had a great coach in Bernie Bickerstaff. I mean, it was first class, especially the first year.
Doug Smith,
right? Doug Smith was there, and Byron Houston, remember him from Oklahoma? And I mean, there were so many. Derek Grimm, Chris Hollander. We had so much fun. They won the championship both years. Again, first year, very cool cities. I won $1,800 on a slot machine in Vegas. A lot of good things.
Part.
Yeah. And when I was doing it, I found out how difficult life on the road is. And the fact that when you're packing a bag, coming home, you're home, but you're thinking about the next road trip. Then you got to do a home game, which turned out to be the worst, because you're home. You just want to be home, right? You don't want to have to go. It's like when you're on the road, who cares, right? You don't have anything to do anyway. Right. But when you're home, so I realized, thank goodness I did this, because it made me realize this isn't the career I want. And doing the morning show with Jay was awesome, but that wasn't my career either. I'm not that passionate about sports in terms of, I saw where the business was going, right? My first time on the air, I was still getting faxes sent to me to read the news, sports news. Metro networks would fax us the sports news, right? By the time I was done, the listeners knew way more than I did. They paid attention. They had the internet. They had the stats. I couldn't fool anyone anymore because I didn't really have in-depth knowledge. I didn't play. I wasn't around. It was like I was just a talking head. And so I did know that, again, I could be good at sales and marketing and leadership. And that's really what was in my blood, I think. So when I went to Memphis, I was there I was 29 years old. I was there as the program manager. But what happened was we were paired with the #1 station in the market. And that station had a sales manager who was also our sales manager as the sports station. And again, as you can probably figure out already what I'm going to say, he didn't care at all about the sports station because he had the #1, the baby, the one that made all the money.
Right.
So I went to my boss and I said, I have a question. If I build the greatest sports radio station in the history of sports radio stations, but that guy doesn't sell it, I'm getting fired, aren't I? And he looked at me and he's like, well, you figured this thing out quickly. And so I went home, I told my wife, and I said, I guess I have to figure out how to sell. And I figured out how to sell by selling myself. because I was still on the air at the time. I had brought Rob Fisher down
Oh yeah.
from St. Louis, and Rob and I were doing a show. And so I went in, I started talking to clients, and I would make things up on the fly. Hey, want to come in for an interview? Hey, want me to promote your charity? Hey, do this. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm the program director
Right.
and the host and the salesperson. And by the way, nobody at the radio station cares about us. So they may not know anything I've done for months. So I'm just going to do it. And I did it. And people loved it. And then I started taking Rob out, and I'm like, you do the same thing, and this person and that person. And that's when I started to figure out that content is a lot easier to sell than advertising.
Yeah, well, I mean, we talk about all these things like the business sports, like you're the guy behind the scenes that's making all this stuff kind of happen. We can get into this in depth later on, but of all these things that you do, yeah, you wanted to be the play-by-play guy, and you figured out that wasn't the right path or the path for you. What are those things that we don't know about is just John Common here, that go into a radio station. What are the key components of those things that we should know about?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things behind the scenes, and you said it, and Ken and I lived it, in the sense that the key is to get involved so that you can see it all, right? Because I know people who got into the industry, of course, thinking, oh, I'm going to be the next Frank Cusimano, or whoever it may be that they wanted to be as a talking head. And they realized they were a better producer, or they were a better manager, or salesperson, or there's so many things that go into it. And today there's even more. I just had a young person ask me, what if you were me and you're in this situation today, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I would tell you absolutely what I'm doing. I'm learning how to film. I'm learning how to edit, right?
Yeah.
I'm learning how to do all of the things that I can do. I'm learning everything there is to know about social media and YouTube. We pay a guy, my company pays a guy a good salary who is a consultant only for YouTube. And his job is basically to stay on top of what's happening with everything that continues to change.
Wow.
So he helps us. They change something, he figures it out. He helps us again. And so there's so many things, but like anything else, if you want to be in the insurance business, go shadow an insurance person,
Sure.
right? Because you may think, for example, I've had this thought before. Wow, what a great business insurance sales would be. You know why? Everybody is a target.
Yep.
Yeah.
How old are they? 16? In. That's it. That's all they have to be, is a 16-year-old human being to be a target. I have to find people who want to advertise to sports fans, 25, 54, have money, right?
Yeah.
Willing to invest in their company. Whereas an insurance person can walk into a restaurant and see every living, breathing person there
Sure.
over the age of 16. So I used to think about those things, but no matter what it is, you have to get in and see it. We have a young man now who works at our radio station who he graduated from Drury. He reached, literally the day he graduated, he started reaching out, and he just kept reaching out, and he would send little emails that would say, hey, I saw you added a wrestling show. Just so you know, I'm a huge wrestling fan. I could be an asset to that.
Oh,
I didn't know this kid from Adam. He read an article about what we were doing, and he kept sending emails. And finally, I looked at the guy that was here, and I was like, we have to bring him in. I've never seen anyone who's more passionate about what we're doing. He's never even met us before. And he's here now, and he's working with us. And he didn't have a lot of, let's face it, they don't teach you a lot of the things that you have to do behind the scenes in certain instances, at least where he was. So, but he's learning it all, and he's interested in it all. And I love that, but I also love that we have Randy Carricker in a room with Grant Salzman. Grant just graduated Mizzou in May. Randy's been in the business for 40 years or 50 years, and they interact and talk and get different perspectives and all of that. And that's what's really fun right now.
It is.
That's awesome. We'll get into that after the break. Really enjoying our discussion with Dave Greene. You are listening to Business of Sports, Playmakers Beyond the Competition on the Lou Information Station, live and on demand 24/7 at louinfo.com. Welcome back to the Business of Sports, Playmakers Beyond the Competition. We are enjoying our discussion with Dave Greene of Big Toe Media and STL Sports Central. Dave, talk about you've been a great example of really showing how and being ahead of the game on how the sports media world has changed from the traditional TV and radio stations to now so much online podcasts, YouTube. Talk about, was there an aha moment that you had that kind of said, this is where it's going and this is where I need to go?
Yeah, there was kind of a couple. So I was running a group of radio stations for Cumulus, and one of my big sponsors in the market that I was in the mortgage business. And I went and talked with him, and he turns out to be dating Ric Flair's oldest daughter and very well connected in the pro wrestling space.
Oh my
And
God.
he was just getting ready to start a podcast. This was 2015.
Wow.
And he asked if I had any idea how we could sell the podcast to advertisers. And all I said was, man, if you get it started, let me know. I'll try and help and see what I can do. I had no idea how to sell a podcast. I knew how to sell media. I assumed I would just go to local people in the market we were in, because that's where he was, and I would sell it to those people. I wasn't even really thinking about what is this.
Yeah.
And they do the podcast. The 6th episode of the first podcast got 180,000 downloads.
Jeez.
Wow.
It was a great tell-all story about a famous night in wrestling. It got picked up by all these boards. I didn't know a thing about wrestling at the time. I was a fan in the 80s and WrestleMania 3 and Hulk Hogan and all that, but the Attitude Era I wasn't a part of. I had never seen Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Rock wrestle ever. And now I'm deep in the wrestling business, which is just crazy. But what happened was, we started these podcasts, we started selling them. I started meeting the people who were really in the podcast space. And there's an event that they have now twice a year called Podcast Movement. And so Conrad Thompson, my business partner, and I decided to go to Podcast Movement and just ask questions, try and figure out what's going on in the space. And so we were at this, massive complex in Nashville, at the Opryland Hotel, which is, like the size of about 400 malls.
Yeah.
We're both big and fat, so we were so tired from walking around this space. But it was the aha moment, because what happened is we met with as many of the ad agencies as we could find, and we asked them one question. And the question was, would you rather deal with a big podcast network that has hundreds or thousands of shows, or would you rather deal with the creators directly who only have a handful? And before we could finish the sentence, and I'm not kidding you, 5 different times before I finished that sentence, someone would go, "We'd rather work with you."
Well,
That's awesome.
And we went, okay. So, and this is the full circle moment. I had been in sports radio for 25 years. What was sports radio? Niche programming. That's all it was.
yeah.
We were telling everyone, listen, we know in your mind advertising on KSDK or KMOX sounds like a bigger deal than advertising on 590 AM, the sports station. But let me tell you the difference. I know exactly who my audience is, because there wasn't a soul listening to that station. And I'm exaggerating, but that wasn't a 25 to 54-year-old guy who liked beer and sports and food and steaks and power tools and lawnmowers and right.
Yeah.
But yet people weren't there yet. And now here we are, 2025. And what's everybody doing? Buying niche audience, buying podcasts, because it's niche audience, because I'd rather spend my marketing dollars. I'll use Ken's chip business as an example, right? If I have potato chips and snacks that have Mizzou players in it, I would love to find a way to market to just Mizzou fans or people who like potato chips.
Yeah,
rather
absolutely.
than everyone, because not everybody cares about Mizzou and not everyone likes potato chips. So it's crazy how full circle it came. But with podcasting, it changed my life because remember, I was in radio. So selling radio for years, I was starting the conversation with a new advertiser from a 15-foot hole. Yes, we still exist. Yes, it still works. Yes, people are listening. So it's like you're starting from this negative feeling of, well, radio. I don't know if I want to do radio advertising. I tried that in the 70s, right? That was the feeling that you got. In podcasting, it's completely different. $2.6 billion in advertising, which, by the way, should have been radios. $2.6 billion being spent in podcast advertising this year. They're projecting $5 billion 3 years from now.
Wow.
And what happens is they come to you and say, we have clients and money. We want audience. And if you have audience and an opportunity to sell, with our wrestling podcast specifically, we built community, right? Locally, I will give you 2 examples. What Tim McKernan has done and what Dave Glover has done. Both of those, their audience isn't just an audience, right? It's a community. They're people that are, Tim had it with, sort of the guy talking fun and young guy humor. That's great. And Dave had that with kind of a little different audience. Or I shouldn't say has that with a difference. So you can kind of understand what we did. Now magnify that by 100, because these wrestlers, some of these guys, Kevin Nash and Mick Foley and Ric Flair, some of the people that we worked with, Diamond Dallas Page, they have millions of fans. And so, number one, they're great at telling stories because they tell stories for a living, right? And sold for a living. So a lot of them are very good at podcasting. So we built the podcast network up. We now have other sports. We have comedy. We have entertainment, business. We've done a lot of different things in the podcasting space because we have those relationships with the advertising agencies. And so to transition that to what we've done here this year in St. Louis, it's the same exact thing, really, that we're trying to do. A little bit different. It's not wrestling or, that's the binder with STL Sports Central. It's St. Louis sports, right? My big thing lately that I keep saying to everyone is there's only 2 things in St. Louis we all agree on: our sports teams and our community. Everything else we completely disagree on.
Right.
And I happen to have a local sports network and a local content radio station that talks all about St. Louis. So I like being in those 2 spaces. But in terms of that aha moment, that trip to Nashville, when those agencies looked at us and said, we want to work directly with the creators, and it's the same reason they liked us when we were in sports radio, because we can be creative. We can come up with fun things to do instead of it just being a transactional, hey, would you like to buy this many 60-second spots for this much money?
And in that space, I mean, so you're St. Louis based. You talk about the billions of dollars in ad revenue out there. Any idea what that ad revenue is in St. Louis? Just St. Louis alone? And are you only St. Louis, or do you branch out to other cities, Kansas City, Chicago, Nashville, Memphis?
Yeah, so it's on that side, it's all national. I mean, everything obviously is available, worldwide. Our podcast network is international.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is we have listeners in like 40 different countries.
Wow.
So it's there really is no more local. That's one of the beauties of STL Sports Central, our digital sports network, and one of the reasons that we did it. There are a lot of St. Louis sports fans who don't live here.
Yeah.
If you have a radio or a TV station, you're limited by whatever that signal is.
Right.
When you're on YouTube, you're not limited, right? You can be in Timbuktu And if you've got if Timbuktu has Wi-Fi, you can get connected. So, that's the beauty of it is, and I call it my national and my local businesses, but that's just so I can keep it straight in my brain, but they're really all national.
Yeah.
That's great. Dave, go through for everybody what you're doing at STL Sports Central first, and kind of what the target is there, and obviously it's all things St. Louis sports.
That's it. It's when I first got into sports radio back in the day, it was all about engaging with the fans, right? Sports talk radio. Hosts talked, they brought callers in, they got their opinions, everybody shared in their fandom. Well, what's sports radio today? No calls, right? Barely any interaction and engagement with the audience.
Interesting.
And when fans want to react the most, which is right after a game or right when breaking news happens, there's nobody there. And the best example is the St. Louis Blues hired a coach on a Sunday morning at 8:30. The first media outlet in St. Louis that was on was KMOX at 10 o'clock. You know why? Because KMOX always comes on at 10 o'clock on Sunday for sports on a Sunday morning. Nobody broke in and said, hey, one of our 3 professional sports teams just hired a new coach. What's the reaction of the fan base? Right? And so we hadn't started yet, but we would have been on within 10 minutes, right? With Jamal Mayers and some of our hosts sharing opinion. What do you think? Let people comment in the chat room. Get immediate instant reaction, because that's what today, right, is all about.
Yeah.
And if there was an aha moment with this, it was because I was watching a Mizzou game, sitting on my couch. Mizzou had lost a football game that the fan base thought there was a chance to win. And I was angry. And my wife literally looks at me and she's like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm commiserating with people about the loss. And she said, what is that? And it was, Power Mizzou's chat room, and Twitter. And I'm like, I want to react, and I want to react with other people. I don't care who they are. I just want to react with Mizzou fans right now. And I'm, no offense, honey, stuck at the house with you. And you don't want to bitch about the offensive line. You don't want to break down the way the guards play in this game. So that's the kind of thing where I went, man, we really need this. And Chicago and Dallas and Denver and Philadelphia and some other markets had started to do this, where it's a sports network, but it has no signal because it doesn't need a signal. It's YouTube. It becomes on demand, both on YouTube and podcasts as soon as it's done. We also have social media. A lot of people had followed STL Sports Central before, which was serving St. Louis sports content. And then, as I said, we added the Randy Carrickers and the Bernie Miklasz and Mike Claiborne's with a lot of young content creators, so that we sort of have both sides. And, that was important to me, that we, and really what we're doing is we're just trying. We do a post game after every local game. Those have been fantastic. Randy is on every day. Bernie's on every day. Bernie writes columns for us at stlsportscentral.com every day, just like he did when he was with the Post-Dispatch. So it's fun. It's new. People seem to really be digging it, and so we're just going to keep cranking out content.
That's awesome. And then next step is the former KFNS. You see an opportunity there to buy it and change it to what is now KLIS, Lou Info Station, and talk about what you're trying to accomplish there.
Yeah. So as I said, sports and community are really the 2 things that people agree on these days. And after that, it's all over. And so I didn't want to buy a radio station. I had no interest in owning a radio station. But Dave Zobrist, who owned it, who also didn't have any interest in owning a radio station any longer, the truth is there's 36 acres of property that comes with it, and that's what we bought. And it happened to come with a radio station, and one that I have a lot of affection for. So in a way, I was glad that I was the one that could finally just put the knife in it and end it, because KFNS had a long, great 30-year history, but it was over. And in my opinion, all sports radio is over. And I don't mean that you can't make it as a quote unquote sports station, but you better be doing more than sports, because here's the thing we said for years, right? You guys have heard this. Sports radio is like a couple of guys going to a bar and hanging out, talking sports.
Sure.
Okay. Well, I don't get to many bars these days anymore, but when I do, I go with my buddies and we drink and we talk sports and a hell of a lot of other things.
Right.
Because I have never been in a setting where I sit there with my friends and we just talk sports, right? We have more interest. And second time I'll pick up my phone. The phone and podcasting proved it to us, right? We have more interest. Think of what radio is. So radio for many years, especially on the music side, is one format. I like adult contemporary, or I like country, or I like classic country, whatever it is. Well, then the iPod comes out and we start making our own playlists, right? My playlist has Garth Brooks, Dr. Dre, Madonna, Neil Diamond. What format radio station am I listening to? None.
All over the place. Yep.
The number one station in the market right now, in my opinion, only my opinion, I think the ratings back it up, I don't even know, is The Arch, 106.5. What format is it? 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. What format is that? That's not a format. That's good music.
Right.
Yeah.
So why can't good talk be a format and not have to be one of the 17 conservative talk stations we have in St. Louis, or a sports station, or, this? So I want to talk about what St. Louis is talking about. And St. Louis does talk a lot about sports because it's a huge part of our culture. But we talk food and music and entertainment and lifestyle and business and all of these other things too. So that's what I want. The content of this radio station is a bunch of podcasts, and we air them on the radio. If you want to listen to them live when they're there, great. If you don't, and most of you don't, because who is pulling up at Sunday morning at 10 o'clock and saying, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to sit in my car and listen to Ken and Chris on 590 from 10 to 11.
Right.
Nobody does that.
Right.
So if they're trained, so to speak, to think, I like that subject, I want to go listen to it without the commercials in the middle of it for 45 minutes on my way to and from work, I'll knock that out by listening on demand, pop up the app, pull it up, it's there.
Dave, I got a question for you. So you're doing this in St. Louis. Anybody else doing this? Is there anybody else that's taken this concept, this St. Louis, this city focused concept, and putting it in other cities in Chicago, New York, LA, wherever it might be?
Yeah, there are. But what's happening a little bit in radio is that you're going to have a resurgence of the local ownership. Because what happened is these companies like Odyssey and iHeart and Cumulus, they own way too many properties, way too many. They don't need them. They don't make any money for them. They've ripped them out of the local markets. They don't put any money into them. It's absurd. And they own these assets that frankly are losing value every day, right?
Yeah.
So what's happening is there are some local owners like me who have said, well, if the price gets low enough, because here's the truth, radio is dying, but dying takes a long freaking time sometimes, right? Radio won't be dead while I'm alive. So I'm going to suck every ounce out of it that I can, because 7 out of every 10 cars on Manchester behind me, or Lindbergh behind me, are still listening to the radio. and even more than that, are getting out of their car and listening to something when they get to work, or whatever it is that they're doing. So
Gotcha.
I want to keep creating content. This content that we're doing right now, available live, on demand, YouTube, podcast, clips on social, the whole deal, to try and bring the content wherever people are. That's the whole idea.
Fantastic.
Dave, this has been great. Real quick, how can businesses get involved in STL Sports Central and KLIS?
Our information is out there. Just go to the websites. You can click on advertising and find a way to get a hold. I'm Dave at podcastheat.com. And you can get a hold of me. We'd love to talk with you. We're doing things differently from that perspective as well with businesses. We are trying to be just a very modern, easy to work with media company. If your business is interested in partnering with content, with being involved in actual content, as opposed to, hey, we're going to step away for 5 minutes and allow you to go flip whatever other content you want to listen to, but please come back. That's not exactly what we do. So it's a little different. Love to talk with you about it and how we can interject it with your company and partner up. But I appreciate you guys and what you're doing. I love the guests that you've had on, and just listening to their stories, because that's what this radio station essentially is all about, is telling the story of good St. Louis people, like you, Chris. Oh, and you too, Ken. I'm just kidding.
Oh, thank you. Dave, this has been great. Really fascinating what you've done and what you've got ahead of you. So really enjoyed it, and thank you for joining us.
Big things coming. Thanks, gentlemen.
Well done, Dave.
Thank you.
Have
Thanks,
a great
Dave.
week.
Boy, I really enjoyed that conversation with Dave, and it was great that he kind of put us together. Obviously, we've become good friends the last couple of years, but it was his thought to put us together for this show, which I certainly appreciate.
Dave Greene is one of those staples of St. Louis. I've known Dave for a long time. And our kids used to swim in the same swim team. So I would see him at the swim meets on Monday nights, and you'd always see him around the events that we produced way back in the day, whether it was Final Fours or wrestlings or Frozen Fours, whatever it might be. Dave's always been such a great advocate for sports, and for him to come up with the idea to do something around this topic of the business sports, and we're just so fortunate to have him. And I just love his enthusiasm. I love how he gives back. I think that's really cool.
Really is. Yeah, he's great. And I tell you, it's exciting what he's got going for St. Louis sports fans here with KLIS and the STL Sports Central, and really encourage everybody to give that a shot. Look for it on the podcasts and YouTube. And he's a good guy, very dedicated to St. Louis, as you say, and we appreciate him coming on today. So and appreciate him giving us this opportunity. That's going to do it for us this week. You can catch us live Sunday mornings at 10, or find us on YouTube or any major podcast outlet. Just search Business of Sports, Playmakers Beyond the Competition, or you can always find us at luinfo.com. Chris, another week down, another one to come. Looking forward to next week.
Ken, we got a great one next week. Looking forward to it. Have a great week, and be careful out there.